I had no idea who I was then, so I didn't really have any idea what it was I was planning to do. When I'd gone to college, the two majors I took weren't even things that I were like really, really interested in. They were just kind of what I thought would make my family the most proud of me. So I was totally lost and unsure of who I was or what I wanted to be. I want to say I was 19. So applying to GameStop was kind of just like almost a kind of give me job, if that makes sense. Because, I liked games, I like pop culture, things like that. So working at GameStop for a young kid who doesn't have any idea what working in retail was like, sounded like a dream job to work at while I figured out what the hell it was I wanted to do and be in the future. Oh man, it was honestly probably the worst working experience I think I could ever have. On the one hand, I had a couple of really great days where me and my coworkers or a couple customers would come in and I could talk just about, what new games were coming out or maybe some retro games or just anything related to games and discussion and stuff like that. And they have different upbringings and different viewpoints, and they were able to get me to come around to like a game that I previously completely hated just because their viewpoint was so interesting. It let me look at that game through a different lens. But those days were so far and few between, especially at the location I was working at. It was the biggest, not the biggest in terms of like size, but the most visited GameStop in the entire not tri-state area, because it wasn't like that big, but like the counties in the area, all of the counties in the area kind of funneled into that one. So out of all of the districts, GameStop stores, ours was the busiest by a long shot. So there were some days where it would be even completely impossible for me to actually take a lunch break because we were just so swamped. We would get nagged by like our higher ups and stuff like that, yelling at us that, why is the displays not set up properly, or why are all the game cases not put back on the shelves? And there were several times where we had to stay after, the store was meant to close because we had to completely clean the store because there was no time to do any type of upkeep or any other tasks during the day except for just ringing people up and getting them through the door and out the line and all that nonsense, just because there were so many people. I still carried a lot of that kind of people pleaser energy. A lot of my motivation for doing things was to, get noticed and get some acknowledgement from my family. And I think that bled into how I approached working at GameStop. So I'd go above and beyond and do things that were completely unnecessary. I would completely dust all the shelves and some of the displays because no one ever did it. And, I'd sweep or vacuum the store and try to keep it at, looking at least kind of kempt. Unless I was suffering from a really bad migraine, I would always take on shifts from any of my coworkers who didn't or couldn't come in. And that kind of contributed to allowing me to jump up from my entry level, they call them game advisors, or at least they did when I worked there, from that entry level position to being an assistant manager. But the rub for that is that I couldn't even officially claim that title because we had little gaming widgets that we can do on the computers when, there weren't customers in the store to do kind of training, but it was gamified because GameStop thought that was cute. So you had little levels you'd go through and ask questions and do little modules or whatever. But I never got to finish any of mine because I was always so busy with customers and store upkeep that I never had time to actually sit down and do those modules. The first manager, at first I thought really highly of, but a lot came out regarding that person's medical conditions. Turns out basically this person was saying that they had terminal cancer and they were in and out of the hospital for different treatments and possible experimental medications that may change the prognosis, stuff like that. But it had come out that all of that was a complete lie. None of that was true whatsoever. Yeah, that was a pretty weird shock, but I don't think I had developed more than a friendly professional relationship with them. So it wasn't something that completely devastated me or anything like that. It was more just wow, that is really awful. I can't believe a person could do that, let alone, this person who was my manager. After that manager I told you about that was, lying about that terminal illness, no one had any idea where they had gone. They had just randomly disappeared a couple days before the announcement was made that they were officially fired. Because no one can get a hold of them and no one had any idea where the hell they were. And to this day, I have no idea if they'd ever found them and figured out, what was going on with that situation. But after that had happened, before we had gotten the new manager, our district manager had come in and he was kind of running things for a few days until the new manager could come in and get briefed and take over. And this district manager is like, it's a cliche how sleazy he was. Literal sleazy salesman cliche. He was that guy. Like, he had the facial hair, the hair greased, slicked back. He only wore what I guess he assumed were really nice looking suits, but they always had like a cheap look to them. He always smelled of alcohol, cigarettes, and a cheap cologne. Maybe my memory is a little bit kind of exaggerating him a little bit, but just from like trying to picture him in my mind's eye, that is the exact vibe I get. Like that cliche, sleazy salesman type guy. And it's insane because that's also exactly how he acted. To explain, here's an example. Once I had gotten in trouble and I gotten written up at the job, there was a woman who had come in and she was looking for a gift for her grandson. I've always felt that it's better in the long run, not even just for like a store, but like as a person, to take advantage of someone really screws you over in the longer run. I had no intention of like offering her a Power Up Rewards membership or like tacking on any extra add-ons, to whatever she wanted to purchase, which is something they push pretty regularly at GameStop. At least the district manager and the manager above him did. For me, it was way easier and it felt more natural to just get this person exactly what they wanted to the best of my ability, and they'll come back because they know coming to me will get them exactly what they want. So she had come in and she'd asked me, what should I get for my grandson? I don't know what he's into these days. And this was way back in the BC times before Fortnite and all that. So, she's asking me about like the Lego games and Minecraft and some of the Call of Duties and Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. And, I'm walking her through it and telling her about the different games. And she's got a ton of questions. She has no idea what I'm saying pretty much at all, but she's got a ton of questions and she's super curious. And so I'm helping her out for a pretty good long while. Ultimately, I think we ended up settling on the Lego Marvel Avengers kind of like team up game, because she was telling me that he really likes superheroes. I'd rung her up for it, so I asked, if he's really young, do you want to put a warranty on it? So like if there's any scratches or anything like that, you can come back and just get a replacement disc. And she did do that, but other than that, I didn't, ask if she wanted a control or a new console or any type of upgrade or the Power Up Rewards card or whatever they call it now, because there's no reason for me to do that. She's, someone's grandma. She comes into GameStop twice a year, once for her grandson's birthday and once for Christmas. Like, she doesn't need a 12-month subscription for, monthly coupons and stuff like that. She's not going to use that. So, what's the point of pushing it on her? And then if I do that, the next time she comes back to the store, she's going to be like, oh, I don't want to work with you because you put some random Power Up Rewards card charge on my purchase. I didn't want that. I don't need that. There was no point in my eyes. So she'd left, and then the district manager comes up to me and he's like, why didn't you offer a Power Up Rewards membership? And I said the exact same thing I just said. Like, what's the point? She comes in here twice a year. We'd just be taking $14 from her for nothing. Of course, he didn't like to hear that, and he was very unhappy with me not, as he put it, doing everything that my job description entails. I remember one time, basically this kind of same situation had come up, but instead of like asking me about it after the fact, he had like stepped in and pushed me out of the way and then gave her this person the Power Up Rewards card himself, and took over that transaction. And then that person had come back a couple weeks later, and he completely threw me under the bus because that person had come back and they were like, yo, what is this charge on my receipt? It's like $15 for some power-ups thing. I don't know what this is. I don't want that. And he's like, oh, wait, why did you sell this person that if they didn't want it? And I'm like, me? My guy, your name's on the receipt. But of course, he's the district manager, so he does that slimy greaseball, sleazeball salesman technique where he like kind of pushes you out of the way and assures the customer that he'll get it taken care of and they'll get this done right away. And I'm over here taking the blame for something that he'd done that I didn't want to do, which was completely insane to me. I think when I had gotten promoted to the position of assistant manager, I was getting like $11, $12 an hour. And when I started, I was getting absolute base federal minimum wage of $7.25, which is not enough to live on. I don't care what anyone says. But like, I was not getting paid enough to be that kind of person. I was not going to sell myself out for a couple of extra bucks for someone else's pocket, you know what I mean? Like, I can't understate how sleazy this guy is. For example, on our busiest day, Black Friday, I'm in the store, someone else is in the store, and our manager's in the store, and it's just us three plus the district manager. And he's supposed to be helping us get all these people through the door and out and get their transactions done and their purchases taken care of, because it's incredibly busy. And because we're the most busy GameStop in the district by a wide margin. And then it's Thanksgiving on Thursday from Black Friday, if you're not aware. Thursday is that Thanksgiving, and then the Black Friday is the day of deals or whatever. On the Thursday, I had to work a shift from 11 to 8, and then I went home and I had to sleep and then come back immediately again at 6 a.m. And then I had to work from that 6 a.m. all the way to 8 again. It was nonstop, go, 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 go. And he's supposed to be there helping us out, getting people to the door and out to make things a lot smoother since we're the busiest store in the district. He, no joke, no exaggeration, sat outside and smoked cigarettes for about 7 hours. Obviously not straight in a row because he would probably be dead from instant lung cancer, but like he'd walk around, maybe talk to some of the people who were in line, smoke some cigarettes, and then he'd go on break and, for like 2 hours, he'd just be gone. And then he'd come back and he'd do the same thing. He'd kind of talk to some of the people in line, smoke some cigarettes. He was just kind of chilling. He was not doing any work whatsoever. So me and him did not get along at all. And I think that's why what had happened. Basically what had happened is I had a friend at the time, it was their birthday. I decided I was going to get them a PlayStation 4. But like I said, don't make a whole lot of money working at GameStop. So we made a deal, and the deal was that he would pay for half, I would pay for half, and that PS4 would be his, and that would be my birthday present to him. I walked up first because it was my transaction. So I walked up first, I put the PlayStation 4, the game, and the control down, and I'm like, I'm purchasing this. Manager's like, okay, fine. And I explained to him, this is going to be a gift for him. So we were going half and half on these. Like, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever. When you work at GameStop, and I'm sure this is like the same for a lot of retail stores, but when you work at GameStop, you have to have someone who's above you do your transaction. So if you're buying something for yourself, you can't just like ring yourself up because that could be, you could abuse that. Me as assistant manager, I had to have the store manager ring me up, and the store manager has to have me ring him up, even though I'm not above him, but like there's no one above him except the district manager, but he's not supposed to be there all the time. So I swipe my card, I pay my 200 or whatever, and then he goes to pay his half, but he doesn't, I guess he's been trading in a lot of games or whatever, but he had a store credit gift card, basically. We basically put store credit on gift cards at GameStop at the time, and he swiped that instead of using like a regular debit or credit card. So half of that purchase was in store credit. But the store credit, those gift cards are like assigned to someone. Like if you have a PowerUp Rewards membership, you can look up your account, using your phone number or what have you, and they can see that you have that store credit associated with your account. And if you don't have a PowerUp Rewards membership, they associate it with your phone number. So whenever you come in again, you can give them the phone number and they can find your store credit. It has like a database that shows who that credit belongs to when it's used. And that credit, my name wasn't on that credit, if that makes sense. So when we split that purchase, on paper, I'm making a purchase using money, basically, that doesn't belong to me. The district manager calls me back and he's like, yeah, can I just talk to you for a second? I was confused at first. He brought up the PS4, but he didn't really bring up the transaction at first. He kind of framed it in a way as if I had like taken it, like just stolen the PS4 as opposed to making a purchase with it. But then he kind of like took out the records of like the transaction, and I was able to kind of piece together once I saw what the purchase was and what was included. Oh, this is when I bought the PlayStation 4 for my friend. That was literally purchased. Like it wasn't a fraudulent purchase. What do you mean? And he's like, well, it says here on the purchase, using your store employee discount, you used store credit that didn't belong to you. $200 of it, I might add. And I'm like, so what you're getting at is you're trying to get me in trouble for making a purchase with someone else's money is what I'm getting at. Even though the person was there and the manager had signed off on it, at that point I was kind of putting the dots together because I knew he didn't like me and I didn't like him. That wasn't a hush-hush. It was a very open relationship of I hate you, but I have to work with you. After that point, I was pretty quick to figure out that he was trying to fuck me over in some way. I'm really thinking he'd use this as his get out of jail free card, if you will, to get rid of me without having to come up with some bogus argument. Because of my health issues, he couldn't just fire me for like missing a shift or like coming in late or something like that, because that would technically be discrimination. Like I have documented doctor's notes and prescriptions and whatnot that can prove that I have these heart palpitations and this faintness and all that. I'm just a 19-year-old kid at this point, 18, 19, in that range, and I have no idea what to expect next. Like, I'm assuming at first that I'm just going to get fired. My mom's going to be super disappointed in me, and I'm going to have to find a new job, and it's going to be totally sucky. Then he says something to the effect of, so I hope you understand that at this time we are going to move forward with charges. And this completely blindsides me. I'm so lost. I hope you understand because a PS4 in the state of Virginia, $400, it's over the limit of grand theft. So we're gonna, asset protection, blah, 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 blah. We're gonna charge you, and then police come in. And at this point, I've gone from like being confused and annoyed to just feeling completely used. It put so much time and effort and so much of myself into being the perfect employee and working my ass off for this job. And to turn around and find out that like, I had no backup, and I was essentially a number. it's really sad because there's so many young people who think working at GameStop would be awesome, because why wouldn't it be, right? Like, it's video games and figures and game paraphernalia, and you get to hang out and talk about games and stuff like that. That is not at all what it is, especially if you work at a busy GameStop. And you don't get paid dick all. Like, $7.25 an hour to work in a GameStop is spitting in your face. GameStop doesn't just give you shifts like, you know, like a normal, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say normal job because I'm sure this is pretty common in a lot of places, but when a lot of people think of jobs who aren't aware of this, they think, oh yeah, you just have a shift. Like, you have like a 9 to 5, you go do your job every day and then you leave. We didn't have that. In fact, sometimes we wouldn't get our schedules until like past midnight the night before. So if it's 2 in the morning, a text comes in giving everybody their schedules, and I might find out that I work that day at 8. I'm asleep at that time. So I have no idea I'm supposed to come into work until I wake up. And if I wake up late, I'm just getting penalized for being late because I had no idea I was on the schedule because it'd come in so late. Like, that's how bad it was. The amount of stuff that you have to deal with, for example, people will come to you to trade in video games or video game consoles, and they will be disgusting. I've actually had people come in to trade in like an Xbox, and no joke, fucking roaches are coming out of this fucking Xbox. I am not kidding. That happened multiple times. There were times where people would come in and you could tell that that person hadn't seen a bath or a shower since bread became bagged. That was revolting. I remember I grabbed the case from this guy and it felt greasy, and I have no idea how you make a video game case greasy, but the stench of this person was on my fingers after this. I felt like I was gonna vomit just smelling it, and I had to run to the back room and I washed my hands for like 5 minutes because I was just that revolted. So like, that kind of shit is super commonplace, and you're just expected to deal with it. Like, here you go, here's your base, barely survivable minimum wage. We'll see you again tomorrow, but you may not know that because you have no idea when your schedule is gonna get posted up. So good luck. So these police, they didn't really say much to me. They kind of like gave me the old, you know, the whole rundown, you're right, remain silent, all that good stuff. I don't know if they felt sorry for me or like if they didn't really know the full story or whatever, but they were kind of just like, not uninterested, but like not prying. I remember one of the officers asking me if I wanted to like cover up the cuffs, kind of like give me a bit of respect as they're taking me out of the store. And I thought that was kind of weird, because I felt like there was no respect to be had in this situation, and you're asking if I want to like preserve my dignity by hiding the handcuffs. Like, I feel like at this point, the district manager has probably told everybody in the store that I'm a complete and utter piece of shit and I like intentionally stole from the store or something like that. I think dignity is out the window now. They put me in the cuffs and they're way too damn tight. But again, you know, I'm just this dumb teenager. I have no idea, you know, what to expect and what should be happening. So I'm just accepting everything at face value, and they put me in the back of the cruiser, and that's a crazy challenge because I've been wicked tall for super long. So like, I think at that point I was already like 6 foot 6'1", where I'm 6'4" now. Squeezing into the back of the cop car while also trying to not like snap my wrists in half in the awkward position I had them in from the handcuffs. Totally a challenge. They took me over to the courthouse. It was about a 45-minute drive away, and the officers don't really say much to me throughout the drive. They just kind of ask me about like, you know, what I might need from them, like in terms of like, do I need to call somebody when we get to the station? Or like, one of them asked me like if I had a car at the store that they might have to like call somebody to come get or anything like that. But at the time, I didn't have a car. So he's asking me about this phone call, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna need it, because like, I don't think there's anybody on this planet I can call that can get me out of this situation. I'm honestly thinking that my mom's gonna just be like, fuck it, I don't care, and just leave me be once she hears the news. And we get to the courthouse. There's like a small police station, and the courthouse is pretty much attached to it. And there's like some different courts, like the circuit court and civil court and stuff, that are like dotted around. It's like an office park, but for criminals. I get there, and I guess the amount, since it was over the grand theft amount, but less than like flight risks. It wasn't like 5-10 grand or anything like that. So I'm guessing for that reason, I didn't have like a bail or anything of that nature that I had to pay. They take me in. I'm locked in this like almost a commons area, but not really. It's like kind of like phone booths, but imagine if you like took a phone booth and like a cafeteria desk and like put them together. It was kind of like a half desk, but there was like a clear plexiglass booth that you were in, and a bar attached to that they handcuff you to. And I was kind of sitting there for a little while they, I guess, do paperwork. And then after a bit, one of the officers came out and they fingerprinted me, and they put me in a cell with a bunch of other people. And like after a while, they brought out food to everyone, and if I'm remembering right, I want to say it was like a slab of bologna, a literal disc of bologna, and baked beans, and I think like a roll. Maybe like another 45 minutes to an hour pass, and I get called back, and they finally done all the like booking and paperwork and stuff, and then they take my photo, and then I sit down with, I guess, a clerk is the best word I'm looking for. I'm not sure like what a better word to describe them would be, but I sat down with them and they're like, you know, you can be released. You're not being held on bond or anything like that. You don't have any bail to need to pay to get out. Are you able to afford a lawyer? And I'm like, no. And they're like, all right, we'll appoint you one. You have appointed a lawyer. Here's this information, blah, 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 blah. And your court date will be held at this time, this day. Are you going to be able to make this court date? And at this point, like I said, I'm super sure that my mom is going to leave me out to dry here, because I am convinced that she hates me. This is just going to be like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and she's going to be like, I'm done. It takes me a bit to answer, and she asks me again, and like at this point I'm like, well, I mean, if push comes to shove, I can walk. So I'm like, yeah, I'll make it to the court date. And then she's like, all right, so you will be given your effects, I think was the word she used, your effects back, and they give me my wallet, my phone, and all that stuff back. And then I call my mom and tell her everything that happened, and it's really hard for me to remember her reaction and what she said to me. All of that's a blur. But eventually she did come pick me up. But I do remember talking to the appointed lawyer they gave me, and he was honestly a sweetheart. I think he could see right off the bat from meeting me that I was way in over my head, had no idea what was going on and what to expect. So he kind of really broke a lot of stuff down and walked me through what was going on. And he told me, he was like, this is your first offense. You have no record before this, and I can tell that you're a really bright and intelligent person. He doesn't know the whole story, right, obviously, but he's like, I feel like whatever this charge is, you know, you just made an honest mistake. You know, you're going to move past this and move on with your life. I remember I thanked him profusely. Like every time we met or we had a call, I thanked him profusely. He was going to attempt to talk down the charge from what it was, because at the time the charge was straight up felony fraud. And he was able to do that, and he talked it all the way down to a misdemeanor shoplifting charge. And at that point, I told the appointed lawyer that, like, since I had no idea what was going on, I was going to plead no contest, because I still had that tiny bit of pride where I was like, I didn't do anything wrong, so I'm not pleading guilty. But I'm also going to not plead not guilty, because I feel like that's going to screw me over. If I plead not guilty and, like, on paper, the judge looks and is like, well, on paper it says you committed fraud, so you're pleading not guilty to something you actually did, bam, go to jail. Even though I was pretty accepting of everything up to this point, I think my little bit of pride didn't allow me to just plead guilty. So I pled no contest, and the appointed lawyer was fine with that. So I'm assuming, I guess he kind of had an inkling that the charge was kind of shitty too. All that leads up to my court date, basically. You know, we have like a few conversations up to that point, and he's kind of getting to know me. And I'm guessing he was the kind of lawyer that wanted to like talk to me before just showing up, because I've heard that a lot of appointed lawyers don't even talk to whoever they're representing until their court date. So I guess I've really lucked out in getting this person who is willing to look out for me and see past the charge to see me as a human being. But anyway, all that leads up to the court date. It's also completely different than I'm expecting. Like, I'm expecting it to be like a one-on-one, and maybe like there's a bailiff and like I want to say cartographer, but that's not the word I'm actually looking for. The person who like does the records for when you're in a court. I'm expecting that, and I'm thinking of like Law and Order and stuff like that. But I get there and it's just like a line of people who have their court dates, I guess, around the same time on the same day as me. So we're all kind of like sitting there, and we're getting our names and case files called up one at a time to go speak with the judge at the bench. I'm not really sure what you call that. I remember there was one of a car theft. It was like a 16-year-old kid. He had stolen a car. There was a kid in front of me. He was in a drug-related hit-and-run case. He was under the influence and had hit a girl. The girl that survived, she had minor injuries, but he hit the girl and then he kept driving and didn't look back. And I guess somebody, you know, who had witnessed it had got his license plates, and that's how he got caught or whatever. He got sentenced with, my numbers might be mixed up, it could have either been 26 months or 16 months of house arrest, community service, and his license was revoked. It's my time to come up. I was still super filled with dread. And I think part of that was justified because I get up to the court or the desk with the judge, and the judge is very clinical. She goes through the case files and she's like, you know, your name is this, this, and this, right? Yeah. And you were charged with this, correct? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, how do you plead? And I'm like, no contest. And she's like, okay. And then my court-appointed lawyer asks her to consider the first offenders program. If you've never been in trouble with the law before and you're caught shoplifting or something like that, especially if you're younger, they give you the opportunity to like take a class and go through this like program is the best word for it, where like they try to make sure you don't shoplift again. And if you go through that course and you complete it, you're all set. I'm feeling like a sense of relief for a minute here because I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, maybe I'm not 100% fucked after all. The judge looks at me and then she looks at the case files and then she says, and I will never forget what she said. I've forgotten her name, I've forgotten her face, but I will never forget what she said to me. She said, in an attempt to prevent you from doing anything like this in the future, we are not going to allow you to take the first offenders program to dissuade you from any future criminal activity. And this hits me like a ton of bricks. I feel like there's literally no other reason that she says this to me except for my skin color. You've got people here who've done hit and runs and actually hit a person with their car and left the scene, getting community service and house arrest. And yeah, he got his license revoked or whatever, but like that still feels like a slap on the wrist, especially coming from what feels like a completely trumped up bullshit charge. Again, I'm just a dumb 19-year-old kid. I feel like I have no power here. You know, you're the judge, right? You passed the bar. What do I have? What am I going to tell you to convince you, right? So I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess I'm accepting that. And she's like, in light of the fact that you've never been in trouble before and the information that I've received from your appointed lawyer, your sentence will be 100 days in the local jail, county jail, but you will only have to do a single day and the rest of that will be commuted is the word they used. Even to this day, I'm still not 100% sure why they used the word commuted, because it's not like I had to like drive back and forth and commute to the jailhouse and like serve time or anything, but that was the word they used. I wasn't allowed to leave at that point because technically I was under arrest. The bailiff had taken me back, so they give me like the jail issued shoes, the soft padded, no shoelace shoes, so you can't use them to murder someone. And they give me like this loose fitting big jail top. They put me in the jail cell, and I think this one's also a communal jail cell, so they could avoid doing the paperwork of assigning me my own cell for a single day. And I kind of just sat there and existed. There was no like comfortable seats. Obviously there was no like TV or anything like that. It was just kind of like a bunch of dudes in a room just kind of existing. So I kind of listened in on a lot of the conversations, and I barely remember any of them, but I do remember one, a really older guy, and he looked pretty beat up, pretty rough. I kind of got the sense that he'd been here before a lot of times. My assumption is maybe he was in for like drug charges or something, because he didn't seem like a career hardened criminal that would like murder you on sight or something. But he definitely seemed like he had experience with the jail system. So like I said, my assumption is like drug charges or something. And he was talking to this younger guy. He was a Hispanic guy. This older guy was talking to him, and I remember him saying something to the effect of, this system will beat you down and beat you down and beat you down, but you're a young guy, and I sense that you have a whole life ahead of you despite whatever's got you in here. So just hang in there. You know, you'll get through this. You'll be able to overcome it. Even though those words weren't even remotely meant for me, I kind of took a bit of solace in them and felt a little more comfortable in the situation that I was in. And honestly, looking back, I kind of wish I talked to them and maybe asked them, you know, why they were in and got some more information and maybe wisdom from them. But the Hispanic guy was like really grateful, and he thanked them, and he said, you know, it's just hard and it feels heavy, I think I remember him saying. And the older guy just said, I know. And he nodded his head and just said, I know. And that's kind of all I can remember of all the conversations. That reminds me, there's one other thing that's so weird about being in a jail. It's almost complete sensory deprivation. Like, you have zero idea what time it is and how much time is passing. It's really haunting being in this sterile, fluorescent lit building that seems the same at all hours of the day. And I remember thinking, how could anyone live like this? And this is something that people do for, decades at a time. And obviously I'm not advocating for, awful criminals to be let out because, I felt this way, but just, thinking about like all the people who are in jail because of shitty fucking charges, drug charges, like on some marijuana they had maybe, or they're in a shitty situation because they got a domestic dispute and, they were the ones who took the fall or something, just people who may have done wrong or made a mistake and maybe don't deserve the full extent. And I think that's something else I'm remembering as well. There wasn't a lot of I guess if this is not PC to say, I'm sorry, but white people. I remember the Hispanic guy, the older guy that I was talking about was black. There were no white people in the cell that I was in. I think everyone else was a person of color. And after the time passes, I get let out. And they're like, yeah, your time's up. You're free to go. My appointed lawyer was there when I got out of the cell, and he told me he wishes me luck, and he hopes good things are for me in my future. I think is what he said. And then I got into the car with my mom, and the rest is history, I guess. My mom didn't disown me and throw me out of the house and light all my things on fire, so that catastrophic end didn't hit, which was great. So I felt a little bit more secure in my existence at that point. Losing that job and then being caught up in the middle of all that, I wasn't able to obviously, start applying for another job because I had no idea whether I'd even be out of a jail to go to that job. It absolutely destroyed my credit score because I was putting a lot of stuff like for food and necessities just to get by on that credit card that I had. I had a pretty big collection of retro games and stuff like that, but I had to sell most of it in order just to make ends meet and get by. And at this point, I was really, really struggling to find any type of actual employment because of that thing on my record. Oh, speaking of which, I forgot to say, this district manager of mine, he was fired and charged himself with a whole bunch of horrible stuff. But the biggest thing I remember was money laundering. I'd run into someone I'd worked with, and he told me all about it. He's like, yeah, district manager, gone from the company. He is behind bars. He was arrested and charged with money laundering and a lot of kind of businessy lingo, where it's he was tampering with payrolls and stuff like that. I'm not sure what all the proper criminal charge terms would be, but just a lot of stuff like that. So that felt really awesome to hear when I first heard it. So that was great.
If you could tell everybody in the world one thing, what would it be?
That honestly is a pretty crazy question, but I'd say, and this is totally cliche, and I totally understand if somebody hears this and they're like, shut the fuck up. Just keep taking baby steps. If you get up in the morning and all you do is go take a shower, brush your teeth, and you get right back in bed and you spend the rest of the day in bed, that's okay. Those baby steps will add up and you'll be further than you were before. Slowly, you'll build up to a point where you feel like you've had more strength than you thought you ever had. And you've made it so much farther than you thought you ever could. Because you're not looking a year, 2, 10, 15 years down the line. You're looking at what you can do tomorrow and what you can do better tomorrow, and that's it. And if what you can do better tomorrow is just a tiny bit of self-care and you sleep the rest of the day, that's fine. But just keep taking those baby steps.